My daughter said she was ashamed of me. Now she wants me to walk her down the aisle. I am a man of 52. The day my daughter asked me to walk her down the aisle, the first thing that came back to my mind was the day she told me she was ashamed of me. I was coming home from a night shift when my phone rang. My back hurt, my hands were still dirty from work, and I just wanted to shower and sleep. The number on the screen was unknown. I almost let it ring. At the last second, I answered. A young woman's voice said my name in a careful way, like she was testing something. It was my daughter, Clara. I had not heard her voice in 3 years. My stomach tightened. For a second, I did not know what to say. She went straight to the point. She said she was getting married in a few months. She said her fiancé came from a good family, and that it would mean a lot if her father walked her down the aisle. She said it like we had just been on a break, not like she had cut me out of her life and told me I embarrassed her. I could not even answer right away. I just listened to her talk about dresses and venues, as if the past had not happened. While she spoke, my head went back to the last time I had seen her. She was 19. She stood in front of me on a busy street, dressed in nice clothes I had never seen before, her hair done, her nails perfect. Next to her was her mother, Sophie, and Sophie's new husband, Mark. I had tried to talk to Clara. I had grabbed my courage and walked up to her. She had turned to me with a cold face and told me that I needed to stop showing up and making scenes. She said that she was ashamed of me, of my clothes, of my job, of the way I spoke. She said that if I cared about her, I would disappear from her life. Those words had cut deeper than any insult I had heard in my life. To understand how we reached that point, I have to go back to before the divorce. I met Sophie when we were young. I was a mechanic's assistant at the time. She worked at the supermarket checkout near the garage. We did not have much, but we had energy. We moved in together too fast. Clara was born when I was 24. I remember the first time I held her. She was small and red and angry at the light. I decided that day that I would work myself to the bone if I had to, just to give her a better life than mine. For a few years, we were a normal small family. I worked long hours, sometimes 6 days a week. Sophie took care of Clara. My father helped when he could, but he did not have much either. We never went on fancy vacations. Most weekends were spent in parks or in front of cartoons. I did not think that was a problem. I thought love and effort would be enough. The problem started when Sophie began to compare our life with other people's. Social media did not help. She followed accounts where couples had big houses, new cars, perfect kitchens. She started to tell me that we were stuck and that she was tired of counting every cent. I tried to explain that my work was honest but not magic. I told her I was doing my best. She said my best was not enough. At the same time, the garage changed owners. The new boss cut hours, then cut jobs. I was one of the first to go because I had been there under the old boss and he wanted his own team. I was 36, unemployed, with a wife already full of frustration and a daughter entering her teenage years. I looked for work everywhere. I sent CVs, walked into workshops, asked friends for help. For months, nothing worked. During that period, I made mistakes. I started drinking in the evenings. Not to get drunk, at first, just to calm the noise in my head. Then 1 beer became 3, 3 became more. I missed a meeting at school. I forgot an appointment at the unemployment office. Sophie was furious. She told me that I was useless, that she had married a loser, that she did not want Clara to grow up seeing me like that. One night, after a big argument, she told me she wanted a divorce. She said she had met someone at work, a manager who had his own car, his own flat, and a stable job. That was Mark. She said she deserved better, and that Clara deserved a better example than a father who drank and could not hold a job. I begged her to stay. I promised to stop drinking. I actually did stop after that night, but it was too late. Her mind was made up. The divorce was simple on paper and brutal in real life. Sophie got primary custody of Clara because I did not have a stable income. I got visits every other weekend. I moved into a small one-room apartment above a shop. I took the first job I found, which was cleaning at a factory at night. It was hard work and not glamorous, but it paid the rent and kept me busy. I stayed sober. I did not have the luxury to fall apart. At first, Clara still loved me. She was 12 when the divorce went through. She would come over with her backpack and talk about school and friends. We ate simple meals, mostly pasta and cheap pizza. I tried to save a bit of money to take her to the cinema sometimes. She always seemed a bit tense, but she smiled. I could feel that she was between two worlds, one with her mother and Mark in their new, nicer flat, and one with me, in my small place with second-hand furniture. Over time, the atmosphere changed. Sophie's influence became more obvious. Clara started to repeat phrases that did not sound like her. She said once that if I really loved her, I would find a normal job, not a cleaning job. She said her friends' fathers were managers, engineers, owners, not men who mopped floors. I tried to explain that work is work, that there is no shame in earning money honestly. She rolled her eyes and said I did not understand anything. Sophie, on her side, made every visit complicated. She was late when bringing Clara. She cancelled weekends at the last minute. She told me that Clara had birthday parties or school projects. When I insisted, she told me I was selfish and that I stressed Clara. I could see that every conflict between adults hurt my daughter, so I started to accept things to avoid fights. I thought it was the mature thing to do. In reality, I was slowly being pushed out. The day that broke everything happened when Clara was 16. I had just finished a morning shift as a cleaner in a shopping mall. It was one of the few extra jobs I could find. I wore a uniform with the company logo, a simple blue shirt and dark trousers. My hair was messy from the work and my shoes were wet from mopping. I was pushing my cleaning cart when I looked up and saw Clara with a group of friends near the entrance. My heart jumped. I had not seen her in weeks because Sophie had cancelled our last 2 weekends. I pushed the cart aside and walked toward them, smiling. I said her name. Her friends turned. She froze. Her face turned red, not from joy, but from discomfort. I realized too late that she was not alone. Mark stood a few steps away, holding shopping bags, dressed in a nice coat. He looked at me like I was a stranger who had just crawled out of the basement. I told Clara I was happy to see her and asked how she was. She looked at her friends, then at Mark, then at me. She told me in a flat voice that this was not the time. I said I just wanted a minute. She responded that she did not want people to know I was her father when I looked like that. She said that she felt ashamed when she thought about introducing me. Her words hit me like a physical blow. Her friends heard everything. Some laughed nervously. One of them whispered something and they looked at my uniform. I felt my cheeks burn. Mark stepped in and told me that I should not bother my daughter at the mall and that I should respect her boundaries. He said that if I loved her, I would keep my distance. Clara nodded. She repeated that she was ashamed of me, of my job, of my life. She said she did not want me to come near her school again, or her friends, or their house. She said that if I continued, she would stop seeing me completely. Then she turned around and walked away with Mark and her friends, leaving me standing there with my mop and my cart, surrounded by strangers who pretended not to look at me. I finished my shift that day in silence. I did not cry, not at work, not in the locker room. I went home, sat on my bed, and stared at the wall for hours. It felt like something had died. I had been insulted before in my life. I had been fired, humiliated, poor. But hearing my own child say that she was ashamed of me felt different. It felt like every effort I had made was worthless. After that, contact almost disappeared. Sophie stopped answering my messages. Clara did not call. When I tried to send presents for her birthday or for holidays, they were returned or ignored. I did not want to go to their home and create a scene. I told myself that pushing would only make things worse. So I stepped back. I focused on my work. I took every shift I could to keep myself busy. The only thing that pulled me forward was the idea that maybe one day, when she was older, she would understand. I kept track of Clara's life from far away. A cousin who still spoke to Sophie sometimes told me that Clara finished high school with good grades, that she started studying business, that she posted pictures online with friends in nice places. I never clicked on her profiles. It hurt too much. I knew that somewhere behind those photos, I did not exist. 3 years passed like that. Then, out of nowhere, she called. When I heard her voice on the phone that morning, I almost thought I was dreaming. She spoke fast, maybe to avoid silence. She said she knew it had been a long time, that things had been tense, but that she wanted to move forward. She explained that she was engaged to a man named Julian, whose parents owned several pharmacies and a big house outside the city. She said they were planning a big wedding. Then she said the thing that froze my blood. She said that it would look bad if her father was not present. She said people would ask questions. She also said that Julian's parents were very traditional and believed that a bride should be walked down the aisle by her father. She said that she wanted me to do it. She said we could put the past behind us for one day and act like a normal family. I listened in silence. I wanted to ask her if she remembered them all. I wanted to ask her if she remembered saying she was ashamed of me. Instead, I asked her why she had not called before, for anything else. There was a small pause. She said she had been busy with studies and life. She said that she was young back then and had said things she did not really mean. She said that now, she wanted to build bridges. Part of me wanted to believe her. That part is the same part that cried when she was born, the part that saved coins to buy her small gifts, the part that never stopped loving her even when she turned her back on me. Another part of me was colder. That part heard the way she insisted on how things would look and what Julian's parents would think. I told her I needed time to think. She sounded surprised. She probably expected me to say yes right away. She said she would send me the date and that we could meet with her and Julian to talk about the details. She added, almost as an afterthought, that I should maybe clean up a bit before meeting them, and that she would help me choose a suit later. When we hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed like I had done years earlier. But this time, something was different. I was not broken in the same way. I had changed. The last few years had forced me to grow a thicker skin. I had stayed sober. I had paid my debts. I had climbed up a little at work, from cleaner to supervisor. My salary was still small, but I had some stability. I had bought a second-hand car. I was not proud of my status in society, but I was proud of surviving without falling apart. A week later, I received a message with an address and a time. Clara wanted us to meet at a restaurant with Julian and his parents. I ironed my best shirt, the only one that looked close to formal, and borrowed a blazer from a colleague who was my size. I shaved carefully. When I looked in the mirror, I saw an older man with lines on his face, but also someone who had faced worse days and had not given up. The restaurant was in a part of town I rarely visited, the kind of place where waiters speak softly and glasses shine. I arrived early and sat in front, feeling completely out of place. After a few minutes, I saw Clara walking toward me. She looked like a stranger. She was elegant, confident, carrying a small bag that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She hugged me quickly, without really touching me, and said I looked better than before. I did not know if it was a compliment or a surprise. Inside, we met Julian. He was polite, with firm handshake and a smile that did not reach his eyes. His parents joined us. His father spoke about work and investments. His mother looked at my hands when we shook, maybe noticing the rough skin. They asked me what I did for a living. I told them the truth, that I coordinated cleaning teams in several buildings. There was a small silence. Then Julian's father said that at least it was an honest job. His tone was neutral, but I felt the distance. Clara jumped in and quickly changed the subject to the wedding. She started to list things they had planned. The venue, the guest list, the photographer. Then she explained how the ceremony would go. She said that the plan was for me to arrive early, go in by a side door, and wait in a specific room. She said that when it was time, I would walk her down the aisle, hand her to Julian, and then sit in the second row, not the first, because that one would be for Julian's parents and for Sophie and Mark. She said that this way, everyone would be happy and there would be no confusion. Her words felt like a quiet slap. I asked her why I would sit behind her mother and Mark if I was the one walking her. She said that people saw Mark as her day-to-day father figure, because he had lived with her for many years and had supported her studies. She added that she did not want to hurt him by putting him behind me in front of everyone. Julian's mother nodded and said that they did not want drama at the ceremony. She said that the important thing was the image of a united family. She said that if I agreed to behave and not bring up the past, everything would be smooth. She also mentioned that there would not be an open microphone for speeches, so I would not have to worry about talking in public. At that moment, I understood my role clearly. I was not invited as a father. I was invited as a prop. A silhouette for photos, a detail to make the story look complete. I felt my face heat up, but I stayed calm. I asked if Clara wanted any time alone with me before the wedding, to talk about what had happened between us. She avoided my eyes and said we could talk later, after the wedding, when things were less stressful. We finished the meal in a stiff atmosphere. On the way out, while Julian and his parents were already at the door, I heard Clara speak quickly on the phone with someone. She did not see that I was near the hallway. She said that the meeting had gone okay, that I looked more or less presentable, and that at least now they would have the pictures with the real father to show people. She also said that I knew how to stay in my place. Those last words stabbed me. It was exactly what Sophie used to say, that I did not know my place. Now my own daughter was repeating it. I stepped back before she noticed me and walked outside, my mind spinning. On the bus ride home, I stared out the window and thought about every sacrifice I had made. Every holiday I had worked. Every drink I had refused. Every lonely night in my small flat. All of it, in my head, had been somehow for her, for the hope that one day she would come back and see me as a father again. Now she wanted me, but only as a background element in a pretty picture. I felt anger rising, but behind it was something deeper, a tired, heavy disappointment. That night, I barely slept. I turned in my bed, replaying every scene. The mall. The street where she told me she was ashamed. The restaurant, where she measured my value by how I fit into her image. I started to ask myself a question I had never dared to ask before: did I have the right to say no? Fathers are supposed to give and give, but I was still a human being. Did I have to accept being used just because I loved her? 2 days later, Sophie called me for the first time in years. Her voice had not changed. She spoke like someone who is used to taking decisions for everyone. She said she had heard about the meeting. She asked if I was going to accept Clara's request. Before I could answer, she said that I should not make things difficult, that it was just one day, and that I could at least do this for our daughter. Then she added something that showed her real concern. She said that Julian's family had influence, that this marriage could open doors for Clara, and that it would be a shame if old conflicts ruined her future. She said that if I refused to walk her, people might start asking questions about why, and that it would not look good for Clara. In her mouth, everything was about image again. When I hung up, I realized that both of them, mother and daughter, were aligned on one thing: my feelings did not count. I was expected to swallow humiliation and act grateful for the chance to be in the same room. I went to work that evening with a heavy head. One of my colleagues, an older man who had seen me arrive degraded years before and then climb back up, noticed my mood. I did not give him details, but I said that someone from my family had treated me like a piece of furniture and now wanted me to perform a role. He said something simple, that respect goes both ways, even between parents and children. He reminded me that loving someone does not mean accepting everything. At the end of my shift, I sat alone in the empty locker room and realized that I was standing at a crossroads. If I accepted everything as it was, would walk Clara down the aisle, smile in pictures, then return to my small flat knowing that she still saw me as something to hide. If I refused, I risked losing any chance to repair our relationship. Either way, I would lose something important. I decided that before making a choice, I needed to speak to Clara alone, without Julian, without Sophie, without anyone. I needed to know if there was still a piece of my daughter somewhere behind this cold, organized woman who cared so much about appearances. So I sent her a message and asked her to meet me one afternoon, just the two of us, in a quiet cafe far from the wedding venue and our old neighborhood. She accepted, but her reply was short. She said she had a tight schedule with work and wedding planning, so she could only give me 1 hour. Even in that detail, I could feel the imbalance. My whole life was on hold because of this, and for her, it was just another item in her calendar. I walked to that meeting with one clear thought in my head: this conversation would decide whether I could stand next to her on her wedding day without hating myself. When the day came, I arrived early and sat at a corner table. I ordered a coffee I barely touched. My hands were sweating. I felt like I was going to a job interview, not to see my own child. When Clara walked in, people looked up. She had that kind of presence now, built from confidence and money. She saw me and came over with a small smile, the polite kind you give to a distant relative. She sat down and checked her phone before looking at me. She said she was glad I had come and that she hoped we could talk calmly. I said I just wanted honesty. No speeches, no roles, just the truth between a father and his daughter. I asked her if she remembered them all. She said yes, but added quickly that she had been young and that teenagers say cruel things. She said she regretted the way she had spoken. I told her that regretting something once does not erase years of silence. I asked her why she had not called when she graduated, when she moved, when she got engaged. She looked down at her cup and said that she had not known what to say, that she had been angry at me for the divorce and for the years where I had been absent or drunk. Hearing that hurt, but it was not completely false. I told her that I had made mistakes, that I had been weak when I lost my job, that I had used alcohol as a shield. I did not try to clean my past. I also reminded her that after the divorce, I had stayed sober, worked any job I could, and showed up to every meeting I was allowed to attend. I told her that I had been pushed away, not just by her, but by Sophie and Mark too. She listened, but I could see that in her mind, the story was already written: the poor, unstable father, the reliable mother and stepfather, the difficult childhood. It is easier to live with a simple story than with a complicated one. For years, I had been the convenient weakness she could blame for everything. Admitting that I had also shown strength would shake that story. I asked her a direct question. I asked if she wanted me at her wedding because I was her father, or because people would judge if I was not there. She hesitated. Then she said that both things were true. She said that deep down, I was still her father, but that she also did not want guests asking why he was missing. She admitted that Julian's parents insisted on the presence of the biological father. That word stung. Biological. As if the rest did not matter. I asked her if she was proud of me. Not of my sacrifices or my survival, but of me, as a man. She took too long to answer. Finally, she said that she was grateful that I had made efforts recently, and that she respected the fact that I worked and stayed away from trouble. It sounded like she was talking about an old neighbor who had cleaned his yard, not her own parent. Then she asked me something that confirmed all my doubts. She said that for the wedding day, it would be better if I told people I worked in building maintenance, instead of cleaning, and that maybe I could avoid mentioning the years I had been unemployed. She said that some guests could be judgmental, and that she did not want them to look at her differently because of where she came from. She also repeated that she did not want any mention of the past in front of Julian's family. In that moment, I saw clearly that the little girl who used to run to me with drawings in her hands had learned to measure everything by the way it looked in other people's eyes. My value in her life was tied to the story she could sell at her wedding. If I fit the image, I was welcome. If not, I had to be edited. I told her that I would not lie about what I did to pay my bills. I said that I was not ashamed of my work. I admitted that I carried shame, but not for that. My shame was for the years I lost to alcohol and for the times I had failed to protect her from the conflict between adults. I told her I had no problem putting on a suit and trying to look my best, but I refused to pretend I was someone I was not. She sighed and said I was being stubborn. She said I was making everything about pride instead of focusing on her happiness. She said it was only one day. Those were almost the exact words Sophie had used. I realized how much their way of thinking matched. I then told her something I had never dared say. I told her that when she shouted in the mall that she was ashamed of me, something inside me had broken. I told her that those words had echoed in my head every day since. I explained that every time I picked up a mop, every time I put on my uniform, I heard her say that she did not want people to know I was her father. I told her that I had carried that weight alone. She did not cry. She looked uncomfortable, but not devastated. She said that she was sorry, again. She said she had tried to move past that memory and expected me to do the same. It was clear that she had not thought much about what it had cost me. For her, it was just an ugly scene in a long list of teenage dramas. For me, it was the point where I had stopped believing that my love could fix something. I asked her what would happen after the wedding. I asked if she wanted a relationship with me, for real, not just for one day. I asked if she was ready to visit my home, to meet my colleagues, to see the life I had, not the life she wished I had. She hesitated again. She said that she did not know, that she would be busy with married life, work, maybe children later. She said that it was hard to promise anything. Those words were more honest than anything else she had said, but they hurt more too. It was obvious. She wanted me for the ceremony. After that, everything was blurry. I was not part of the plan. Our time ended fast. She looked at her watch and said she had to go. I walked her to the door. For a second, I almost reached out to hug her, but I stopped. She squeezed my arm lightly and said she hoped I would say yes, because it would mean a lot to her. Then she left. I stood there for a long time after she disappeared, feeling like someone had emptied me and left my shell standing. On the way home, I thought about my colleague's words. Respect goes both ways. I thought about how often I had accepted crumbs just to feel close to her. I thought about the little box in my wardrobe where I still kept some of her old drawings, with crooked hearts and the words, "I love you, Dad," written with childish handwriting. That night, I took out those papers and laid them on the bed. I looked at each one. I forced myself to see that the girl who had written those words and the woman in the cafe were both real, but only one of them did not have the power to hurt me anymore. I realized that if I said yes on her conditions, would be betraying the man I had become just to please the child I had lost. The next morning, I called her. My hands shook so much that I almost dropped the phone. When she picked up, I told her calmly that I had made a decision. I said that I loved her, that I had always loved her, but that I could not walk her down the aisle under the rules she and her future in-laws had laid out. I explained that I was not willing to arrive by a side door, hide behind a fake job title, and sit behind her stepfather while everyone pretended he was the one who had carried the weight of her life. She was silent for a moment, then she exploded. She said that I was selfish, that I was punishing her for old mistakes, that I was ruining her wedding day because of my ego. She said that I had never been able to think about anyone but myself, and that this was why my life was so small. She said that if I refused, then I should not come at all. Her words hurt, but there was a strange calm in me. I told her that I would respect her wish. I said that I would not come. I also said that the door to my home would always be open if she ever wanted to visit me as a daughter, not as a director assigning roles. Then I hung up before my courage could disappear. The days that followed were heavy but clear. Sophie sent me a furious message, calling me childish and bitter. She said that I had proven once more why she had left me. She accused me of abandoning Clara again. I did not answer. Mark tried to call once, probably to lecture me, but I blocked his number. I had spent years swallowing every insult they threw at me. I was done playing the punching bag. On the other hand, something unexpected happened at work. I told my colleague, the older man, that I had said no. He clapped me on the shoulder and said he was proud. He said that sometimes the only thing you have left is your dignity, and that you cannot rent it out, not even to your own blood. Hearing that did not solve anything, but it gave me a small anchor. The wedding day came anyway. I knew the date. The morning felt like any other on the surface. I made coffee, cleaned my room, checked my phone. I imagined Clara getting her hair done, putting on her dress, surrounded by people who believed they knew her story. I pictured Sophie smiling for the photographer, Mark standing near the altar, possibly walking beside my daughter instead of me. The pictures hurt my chest, but they were only in my head. Around noon, I turned off my phone and went for a long walk through parts of the city I rarely visited. I watched other people live their lives. Parents pushing strollers, couples arguing quietly, teenagers laughing too loud. Nobody knew that, in another part of town, my only child was saying yes to someone while pretending I did not exist. In the late afternoon, I turned my phone back on. Dozens of notifications came in at once. Some were from unknown numbers, probably relatives who had received my number from Sophie and wanted to give me their opinion. I did not open them. I saw one message from my mother, with whom I had reconnected a bit over the last year. She said that she had gone to the ceremony and that she had felt sick when she saw Mark take my place. She told me that Clara had looked nervous when she walked in, scanning the benches as if she expected to see me. She also wrote that when she realized I was not there, something in her expression fell for a second before she forced a smile. That image stayed with me. I did not feel satisfaction. I felt something between guilt and relief. Guilt, because I had caused my daughter a new pain in an already complicated story. Relief, because I had finally chosen myself in a situation where my role had always been to fade into the background. A week passed without any contact from Clara. Then, one evening, long after I had given up hope of hearing from her soon, a message came. It was longer than usual. She wrote that she had been angry with me on the wedding day, that she had cried in the car when she saw the empty place where I could have been. She said that for a while, she thought I had stayed away just to hurt her. But then, she wrote, she had remembered our conversation at the cafe and the words I had used: prop, side door, second row. She said that when she watched the wedding video, she saw something she had not noticed live. She saw Mark smiling like he had won, and Sophie posing in a way that tried to erase any trace of me. She said that, in the photos, she suddenly felt like something was wrong. She wrote that she realized she had asked me to play a part without giving me any respect. She admitted that, deep down, she had still been ashamed of where she came from, and that she had used me as a mirror for everything she wanted to escape. Reading those lines made my throat tighten. For the first time, she was not only defending herself. She was looking at her own behavior. She also wrote that she did not expect me to forgive everything or to forget the past. She said that she did not know how to repair years of distance. But she asked if we could try something small. She asked if one day, when things were calmer, she could come to see where I lived, just the two of us, without any plans or performances. I stared at the screen for a long time. Part of me wanted to respond immediately, to say yes, to open my arms and pretend that this message erased everything. Another part of me was cautious. Messages are easy to write when emotions are high. Real change takes time. In the end, I replied with a few simple sentences. I told her that my door was open, that I would make coffee or tea, that we could sit at my small table and talk about ordinary things. I told her that I did not need apologies in big speeches, only actions that matched her words. I reminded her that I loved her, not as a perfect bride or as a successful adult, but as my child, even if our bond was damaged. She did not answer right away. Days passed. Life went back to its routine. Work, bills, meals, sleep. But something quiet had shifted in me. For the first time in years, I felt like I had stood up for myself and still left a door open instead of slamming it or letting people walk all over me. 3 weeks later, on a Sunday afternoon, there was a knock at my door. I was not expecting anyone. When I opened, Clara stood there, in jeans and a simple sweater, without heavy makeup, without Mark or Sophie or anyone else. She held a small cake box in her hands and looked strangely shy. She said she was in the neighborhood and thought she would try. I stepped aside and let her in. She looked around at my modest place, the second-hand sofa, the shelf with tools and work boots, the small pictures on the wall. There was no judgment in her gaze this time, only curiosity and a bit of sadness. We sat at the table. I made coffee. We cut the cake. At first, we talked about neutral things, her job, my work shifts, traffic, the price of groceries. Then, slowly, we approached heavier topics. She told me that teenaged her had been angry and ashamed of being poor, and that I had been the easiest target. She admitted that Sophie had fed that anger, always pointing at my flaws and hiding her own. She also admitted that she had enjoyed the comfort and status Mark brought and had not wanted anything to complicate that. I listened without interrupting. When she finished, I told her my side again, but more calmly. I told her about the nights I counted coins, about the AA meetings I went to alone, about the times I walked near her school just to feel close to her before forcing myself to turn back. I did not exaggerate. I did not try to make her feel guilty. I just laid facts on the table. We did not solve everything that afternoon. No miracle happened. We did not hug and cry like in a movie. When she left, we were still a father and a daughter with a lot of broken pieces between us. But for the first time in a long time, we were at least in the same room, with our masks a little lower. Sometimes I think about that wedding I did not attend. I imagine the pictures they took without me, the speeches I did not hear, the dances I did not watch. A part of me will always be sad I was not there. A part of me will always wonder if I could have swallowed my pride one last time. But then I remember the man I used to be, who let everyone decide his value, and the man I am now, who finally said no when the price for being present was his own dignity. My daughter once said she was ashamed of me. Years later, she wanted me to walk her down the aisle, not because she had found respect, but because she needed my presence to complete a picture. I chose not to be that picture. Today, when she visits, she calls me before arriving. She sits on my old sofa and laughs at some of my jokes. She still avoids some topics. I still feel the old wound when I see her with Mark's expensive gifts. Our relationship is fragile and imperfect. But when I look at her now, in my small kitchen with cheap cups on the table, I do not feel like a prop anymore. I feel like a man who finally learned that love without respect is just another form of humiliation.
Follow me for more stories.